And it's strange because with the loss of a child, and especially during pregnancy, nobody's going to bring you flowers or balloons for the loss of a child, right?
Yeah.
Especially if they weren't like recognized by everyone or given a social security yet. But no one's going to bring you flowers or balloons for that. But they will when you're having a baby shower. And we know that people are born every day, yes. But I would like to think people remember the one thing that you're certain about for sure is there will be a point where people die. Like their time is done. And we're all living on borrowed time and we don't talk about it.
It all starts with a single question asked to an anonymous caller. What do you think happens when we die? And from there, the conversation goes in completely unexpected directions. Some speak with certainty, others with doubt. Some are still trying to make sense of it all. I'm Zach Ansell, and this is When We Die Talks, a podcast about death, meaning, and how that shapes the way we live. This podcast was born from my own fears around death and the need to talk about it. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. I'm glad you're here. Hey, welcome back or welcome here if this is your first time. This week's caller keeps two names close, Scarlet and Violet. They're twin daughters lost during pregnancy. Their ashes rest inside a teddy bear on a shelf, close enough that the caller can pick it up and hold it when they need to, and most mornings just something that they can say good morning to. Long before that loss, the caller had already started wondering how to speak about people who die. Most of us go quiet around someone who's lost someone, not out of cruelty, just unsure if bringing them up or saying their name helps or hurts. So a while back, sitting with an aunt who'd lost a son, the caller decided just to ask instead of guessing. Do you want me to say his name? Does that help? The aunt said yes, and it made her smile. Bobby. That one small, deliberate act of asking is what the caller carried with them into their harder moments. Because by the time they lost their own girls, they already knew exactly how they wanted to speak about them. Not because anyone told them the right way to grieve, but because they'd already practiced asking the question for someone else first. This episode covers some heavy ground, so I'm letting you know before we dive in. There's talk of pregnancy loss and a period of suicidal crisis the caller speaks about directly. If that's not something you need to sit with today, that's okay. Let's get into the call. I hope you enjoy. Hey, how's it going?
It's going. I'm trying to head up to a quiet room. It's because I have cats, and my cats actually know how to open the door.
Oh, smart cats. Yeah, my dogs are not that smart.
Yeah, I just actually recently lost my German Shepherd, and he was not trained whatsoever, but he was a pretty smart one.
The one thing that I will say in the defense of my dogs, I don't want to say that they're not smart, but I do feel like it's important to mention that they are miniature dachshunds. So for them to figure out how to open a door would be really impressive. I think it would take like a tag team effort, and one of them's almost 19. So yeah, I feel like it's not that they're not smart. They're just really low riders.
Yeah, they just don't have the proper body structure because they have back problems.
Yeah, we don't need to be having them balancing on each other or something, trying to get the door open. Like that sounds like, a recipe for some back issues and then large medical bills. But I do want to thank you for being willing to do this.
Yeah. I think what you're doing is actually, it's almost like, I think of like individuals who speak on this subject as like the Victorian people back in the day. Because like we used to mourn people like openly like that back in the day here in the United States. And then it all went away. I don't know why.
Yeah. I know there's smarter people than me that could tell us why. But yes, you're right that things are much different now. We don't talk about it. And yeah, that's a good place to start. That's kind of how I start all these calls is we'll get into the full conversation. So maybe just briefly, you could let me know why you wanted to do this. It's a topic people don't like talking about. People really avoid it. And then you're also signing up to talk to a complete stranger for approximately an hour. And so I think that's a lot of things that a lot of people would not be into doing. And you were like, I want to do this. So yeah, maybe again, why you wanted to.
So actually, I'm completely comfortable talking with complete strangers. I just recently separated my ways from National Geographic. So it's like I used to be around strangers all the time as a videographer.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I think I've come to this like idea that maybe people back then were built just a bit more different because we didn't hide stuff. Like if someone died, like we used to have lockets of hair of them. We used to make jewelry. We had like specific outfits that we got to wear, and no one put like a set time on grief. And I wonder, like I personally myself, just because I went through an experience where someone did put like a time limit on my grief, I then got to start thinking like, I wonder, if you don't put a time limit, if you don't hide these things, does it change individuals in a way? Could be, could not be. I'm not an expert in this either myself. That'd be great if someone like could answer that for me. But like I really do think that when I look back at history, I often find myself like, just wishing I could have been born in that time period, but I ask myself why. And it's just the openness. And I wonder if like I had gone through my situations back then, would I have felt less shame? So people don't realize that when we hide stuff, we try to appear like everything's okay. There's like these emotions that are then associated with it. And for example, a lot of people don't understand that shame is actually a motivating driver. You can ask someone in like who either studies psychology or psychiatry, like, but we internalize it. And then I feel like it rots us on the inside and then just bad results. So I wonder if that also happens with grief. If we hide it, it like just keeps us stuck in a way.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think with grief, and I think you're kind of alluding to it there a little bit, just in general, I think we know that bottling up our emotions, shoving things down and like holding on to them and not dealing with them, not processing them, doesn't manifest well in our bodies and doesn't do good things. And again, it sounds like neither of us are experts, which is great. I think that's why I do it this way. I just want to have candid conversations with people. But I think we know that that's just not good for the body, not good for us. I think maybe because I know about 8 words of your story from what you put into the application, but you've teased at it and we're going to get into it. But before we kind of fully dive into the conversation, I want to get to know you just a little bit. And obviously we're keeping the anonymity so that you feel comfortable sharing your story and not feeling like you need to hold anything back. At least there might be other reasons that you want to hold things back, and that's totally fine, but at least not in the aspect of the anonymity. But so what I normally ask is the state that you're calling from, and then the state that you would call like your childhood home or like where you grew up, like where you spent your foundational years. And then the second question, and I know that was already 2 questions, but I count that as one. First part of this segment. And then the second question is, what's your favorite book and why? Okay.
So I'm calling from California, currently residing in Eastvale. It's like some middle place in the Riverside County, I think, if I'm getting it correctly. But where I would say I grew up, because number one, I was born there, Santa Barbara, California.
Okay.
And you said the second question was my favorite
book and why.
Book?
Yeah.
Oh, man. I probably don't have the year correct to it, but I know that it was written like 18-something by an author called Mary Shelley. So Frankenstein.
Oh, nice.
It takes place in Geneva. And the reason that it's my favorite book, God, it's like makes me want to cry. Just so Victor, right, the person who creates Frankenstein, like he creates this creature, right? And instantly he's born into the world and he's rejected. So love out the window. Like he doesn't have that sense of like belonging, and there is some type of grief to it. And a lot of her writing, it does incorporate like how she tries to keep those that she lost still with her. I can't remember how it was explained when I read it, but it's like still trying to keep what she lost with her. So a sense of like creating, and you do see that a lot in her writing and like other certain writings of hers. And so I would say definitely, because sometimes the way that I view my grief, like I feel like I was left a monster and then I had to go and be alone. And just that like one line where Frankenstein says, "I am alone." Yeah, it hits.
Yeah. I love that. I don't know. I've been reading some classics lately. I just finished The Count of Monte Cristo, and Frankenstein's definitely on my list. And I just read a really wonderful article. I wish I could remember. I'll probably put it in the show notes when this comes out, but it was someone who had written about that kind of aspect of Frankenstein. You know, I think when anybody thinks of Frankenstein, I don't know if horror is the right, but I would say kind of horror genre or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's, oh yeah, it's about a monster and this and that. But that horror genre always has these like deeper metaphors for life. And I love that you were able to bring that in. And I know, again, I feel like I keep on teasing it, and we will get into your story in a second, but
Yeah.
just because of what you've been through, just that bringing that aspect of the stories about grief, it's about loss, it's about trying to put the pieces back together. From my understanding, I haven't read it and taking from what you said, but I have this giant list of all the callers that I've talked to, a book list. And so I'm excited to add that to the collection. And now we can get into the heart of the conversation. I'm excited to see where this goes. And we'll start with the big question of, what do you think happens when we die?
So I don't know if I can mention I had an experience where I caused myself harm and I flatlined like twice. So I don't know if I can talk about that.
So here's what I'll tell you.
Yeah.
I've asked you all the questions that I had to start the conversation. I will have one more question for you at the very end of the conversation to kind of tie everything together. Everything in the middle here is what you want to share. Your journey, your story. This is about you. And I will say, I have talked to people who have talked about suicide and things of that nature, self-harm. I don't want to avoid that subject because it is important to be heard. That's one of the things, is we're already scared enough to talk about death.
Yeah.
And then we take, I don't want this to sound too harsh, and I think this is this is part of that experience, is sometimes using the word suicide feels like, ooh, you know, that's harsh, and that's ooh. And I think that's part of the problem, is that word is like taboo in itself. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't use or can't use other language around it to soften it or whatever, but ultimately, this is about people's story. This is about conversations about death. That does come up on the show. I let the audience know before the episode starts that, hey, this comes up in the episode. If that's not something that you want to hear, totally fine. But so, yeah, sorry that was a long explanation.
Perfect.
I kind of always say, you're welcome to say anything that you want to say, but then I'm very quickly like, well, we're not going to put like racial slurs and that type of stuff on the podcast. But I think conversations about suicide and all these different aspects of death that we're afraid to talk about is the point of why we need to talk about it.
Yeah, I just didn't want anyone to wherever you upload this, right? Yeah. I just don't want anyone to be, censored.
Yeah.
And so on. Going on with your question, what do I think happens when we die?
Yeah.
From my experience, I had an abortion that I was coerced to do, and it made me very suicidal. And ultimately, from the experience that I had, because I had attempted it twice in a year and I flatlined, like I had to be resuscitated. It's strange because you remember the things that you love the most. My partner that died in Afghanistan, my grandma, and my cousin. And in both of those experiences, they just mentioned to me, like, you have to go back. We're not allowing you to come here, wherever they are. So it's like you can remember what they sound like, even if you no longer have a video. It's weird because if I try to remember right now their voice, I can't.
Yeah.
But in those moments where I did flatline, I could just remember them so perfectly. And I think that we go somewhere, and I don't know where is. It's possibly the things that maybe brought you the most love and happiness in your life. And it's warm, it's fuzzy, it feels safe. And wherever that place is, I'm not a religious person, and I don't think I'm a spiritual person either, but
you're just a person.
I think that, yeah, just a person and with feelings. And, I think that everyone has those feelings. So wherever you felt loved or happy, I think that's where we go. So maybe it's possibly to each its own.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yeah. I think wherever there is, that's where we go. It's whatever made us feel happy and loved. And it's strange because you have this interaction with them, right? And yeah, you can't explain that. Yeah, I know that people call it like near death experiences and stuff.
Yeah.
And when you go through something like that and then you pile up grief with that, it's strange. Like you sound somewhat unstable, but I know that I'm not. Like, there's been plenty of people that have had these experiences, and I just think that there is somewhere that we go. It's just, it's not somewhere we can place a finger. It's definitely not on the map. Nobody has this map, that's for sure. And I think that there are people that are trying to figure where that map is.
Yeah.
Ultimately, maybe it's just a map that only every person has, that's uniquely their own when it's their time.
Yeah. It's an idea that I've heard a couple times in relation to a couple other callers that I've had that have spoken about near-death experiences. And yeah, it's just this kind of idea of it being very individual, which I think is a very interesting idea when so much of the ideology is around like, well, we all have to go to the same place. We're all on this place, but we're all so different. Yeah. It makes sense that, and I don't want to call it anything because when you say heaven, that elicits certain connotations of what that means, but this place would mean something so different to everybody. And so, yeah, I love that idea. I'm curious, do you feel like it's on to that place and then that's kind of it? You kind of exist in this next space, or do you come back, a reincarnation type of idea? Or is it like you're moving, I don't know, dimensionally? I don't know if that's quite the right phrase. It's very amorphous in terms of the language we're using here. But, do you have any thoughts about if it continues, if you stay there, if you come back? Does any of that resonate with you?
Yeah, actually, like it got me tearing up. Because in one of those experiences, oddly enough, like the last time I ever did something to myself like that, and it really did change my mind on that. Like somebody that had, for instance, like I'll just be very honest, like my partner that died in Afghanistan, I just remember him saying, I will come back to you, just not like me. And that love that you still want to like give, it'll be in a different form. And it's strangely enough, I think for me personally, maybe it does come back as like a baby. And because it's just strange, because I don't know how to explain that or why they would say that, because that's not something that he ever told me while he was alive.
Yeah.
And he wasn't a spiritual person either or a religious person.
Just another one of those persons or people or whatever we're calling it.
He's a living being.
Yeah.
And so, it's just, why would, in my experience, why would that individual say that? Like to me, when he was alive, he wasn't known to be like that or to say things along those lines.
Yeah.
I do think that oddly enough, we come back as something, and it's going to sound strange, but like,
nothing sounds strange to me at this point. They're just letting you know, I've talked to almost 100 people, so nothing really feels that strange to me anymore.
Okay. For example, I had to terminate a pregnancy in 2025 for like medical reasons. And after that loss and everything, strangely enough, the cat that knows how to open the door, Sergeant Scout, he just...
Great name. Sorry. Great name.
Thank you. I was chain smoking, oddly enough, next to a bush, and then I just hear this like squeaking. It's not even a squeaking thing. Like it was like and it was just him in a bush, and he had all this dirt in his mouth, and it was super hot. And all that love that I was expecting to give to this child, I felt like the world said, you know what, here's this little one that is in need of you right now. And maybe it comes back in a way like that.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just me trying to put my sentimentalities in a place, whatever it might be. I think that even if it is like that, that it's okay to put icky feelings, and to maybe we do come back reincarnated as a cat.
Yeah. I would say in some respects, that is the point of these ideas, right? Is to find some comfort in loss and things in this life, whether they end up being true or not, and not to discredit any experience that anybody's ever had. I'm not saying that, but that's part of just trying to find meaning in this. And I feel like if you can find meaning and it like resonates with you, like that's awesome.
Yeah, Mary Shelley did it with Frankenstein.
Yeah, totally. Like, what's wrong with that? What's bad about that? And it sounds like, if you don't mind me asking, when did your partner, when did he pass?
He passed in 2016.
Okay, so you've been through the ringer. Like, you've experienced a lot of loss, a lot of really difficult, and I guess all loss is difficult. I don't want to quantify or I'm not trying to chart out which ones are worse than others or anything like that, but that had to be sudden, unexpected loss. And then having to terminate a pregnancy. Maybe not obviously, I'm a man, and so I have no way of understanding what that experience would be like. No comprehension. From what I've heard from women, it's like, that is incredibly traumatic. And so you've been through the ringer.
And going back to what you had just mentioned, after I got myself back, it took me to have to go to a war zone in Ukraine. I was doing something with National Geographic.
I was going to say, oh yeah, okay. I was like, hold on a second, wait.
Yeah.
I was like, I need some context here. I forgot the National Geographic part, but yeah, okay.
Yeah. It took me to have to go to such an environment to stop being suicidal. And it seems like all my marbles went back into place, and I no longer felt, after when I came back, I didn't feel that way. And I started seeing a professional, and like something that they had mentioned to me, and going back to what you had said of like not trying to, not trying to compare, like, pain.
Yeah.
And because that's a very like hideous.
It's a zero-sum game. No one wins.
Yeah.
No one ever wins.
Yeah. But he did mention something to me specifically, and he was, because I'd asked him, why does the hurt of my romantic partner like hurt so much, but when I think of the loss of a child, that goes beyond my like romantic partner that I lost. And he had mentioned something to me, and he said that we are born into like, the relationship of having our mom and dad or grandparents. That wasn't a relationship we consented to. We're born into it.
Yeah.
Versus when you're choosing to have a child, when you're choosing to date someone, to be with someone, you are consenting actively to begin that relationship. And when I lost my partner at 21, like I had no idea I had never thought of this stuff, right? So it took the loss of a child to help me understand my younger self and why that hurt, why I was just riddled with all this grief and I didn't work through it. And so it took me to have to go to a war zone and then come back home and be a professional.
Yeah.
At that point, I was like, I can't do this by myself. And then I came across this doctor. Her name is Katherine Shear. She runs this like a group. I don't want to say group. I think it might be associated to a university in Chicago. Okay. And she had explained to me what like complicated bereavement disorder is. And this is before it's even added to the DSM-5, because it wasn't until after COVID that they added complicated bereavement disorder. It's when grief gets so messed up, it's like infected, like an infected wound, and you have to start treating it because of an infection. And it really helped me make sense of, okay, that makes sense. Why I felt certain ways, and not just trying to put a clinical, like textbook word to it, but it does help. It does help to some sense. And I know that when you do talk about your experiences, you're definitely trying to not have that infection there. You're like trying to treat it. So
like you're saying, it's not, it doesn't necessarily solve anything by knowing it's not, I know this thing now, and therefore it's cured, I'm fixed. It's not like knowing, naming or defining what your experience is like, oh, sweet, I know the name, now I'm good. But I just remember this was, I don't know, probably about a decade ago. I was going through a tough time, and I kept on going to my therapist and being like, yeah, I have depression. It runs in my family. I have depression. It runs in my family. Just repeating that story. And this is my experience. I'm not trying to explain for
Yeah, no,
anybody
no.
else, my experience. And finally, it was after I did some tests with her and a couple weeks of seeing her, she was like, Zach, I don't think you have depression. I think you're sad because of things that have happened recently. I think you have anxiety. And it was like, oh. And then once I knew it was anxiety, it didn't fix it all, but it did shift and be like, oh, it always makes me think of like the Wizard of Oz. And you have this kind of giant figure, the wizard, and all this stuff. And I'm staring at this thing, and it's like this big giant thing. And then you peel back the curtain, it's actually this thing.
Oh,
And it's not, that doesn't necessarily mean it's small, but it's something that it's like, okay, I'm seeing past the magic or the mystery or this, and now I can see what it really is. And it still could be, I don't know, a 10,000 pound bear or something. It could be something still very terrifying, but now I know what I'm dealing with. And that kind of changes the dynamic, I think.
Yeah, and it's strange because with the loss of a child, and especially if like during pregnancy, nobody's going to bring you flowers or balloons for the loss of a child, right? Especially if they weren't like recognized by everyone or given a social security yet. But no one's going to bring you flowers or balloons for that. But they will when you're having a baby shower. And like, we know that people are born every day, yes. But I hope people remember, I would like to think people remember the one thing that you're certain about for sure is there will be a point where people die. Like the time is, I don't want to say, probably like done. And we're all living on borrowed time, right? And we don't talk about it. And when I look back at the history, like going back to earlier in the conversation, I'm just like, I have to wonder if they were able to move through with their life, because not just move on, but because I wonder if they integrated like grief and they carried it, like they knew that they were going to have to carry this for until their time was done. I just have to wonder, like, if people remember that, and it would be nice to say yes.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
And so going back to the Wizard of Oz thing, like we don't, just because you add like clinical terminology to it, it doesn't heal it, but you're like, okay, it starts to give you a shape. You're like, okay, at least I know the outline of this thing. But then what?
Yeah, totally.
But then what?
Yeah, then it's okay. Now I can actually start to tackle it. But yeah, it still could be, and it still is, right? It's a journey. It's still not an easy process to tackle those things in our lives.
Yeah, and that's the part that, like, you know, I know that, like, the people that I lost, like, they're gone. And I've accepted that they're gone. But because they're not gone from my feelings. They're not gone from my heart or my mind, because I think of them. So now what?
Yeah.
And I think that's the only thing that you could really do is, like, you know, kind of hit the Mary Shelley mindset and maybe create.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But don't start chopping up people. I actually don't know if that's how the book actually goes. Yeah, maybe not that part. But yeah, totally. It's, you know, I mean, that's at the end of the day is you have to move forward, not necessarily forgetting them, right? But you still have to live your life in some capacity.
Yeah, because it's a horrible thing to not move. Because when my partner that served in the Air Force, when I met him, he just kept me so in a bubble, like trying to protect me from, because he had already known how I grew up and that it wasn't the greatest childhood, and he just wanted me to be safe. And the one thing that he didn't really prepare me for was what happens if he doesn't come home. And I wish we would have had that conversation. It would have prepared me.
Yeah.
It would have helped in some way. And so I think that when we're not talking about those things and you just have to experience, like, especially like a sudden loss or because you know, there are different types of losses, but you don't get to know every single detail of what happens when someone dies, like in a war.
Yeah.
You're just given what you're given, and that's it. Be grateful that you even got that. But you know, it would help an individual at least start to accept that this is the reality of might happen, and there's a really good chance it might happen. And I think that now when people experience loss, they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And it's almost like when COVID happened, this is going to sound terrible, but having experienced loss and having this traumatic childhood, when people had to isolate, I remember thinking like, ha ha ha, I'm like, I've been here comfy on this side of the
This is where I've lived.
Yeah, I'm like, welcome.
Yeah.
And so they didn't almost really know what to do. And some people coped in not the best ways, and they numbed themselves out. And I feel like that in some way it does add to them not being able to like figure out like grief or even how to talk about grief.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So I feel like it's not like a club or anything, but when you do, well, it might be the world's,
I was going to say, it's a shitty club.
It's a shitty club. Thank you. I didn't know if I could cut.
Oh, you can.
Like,
yeah.
Welcome to the shittiest club.
Yeah,
Welcome
absolutely.
To the shittiest club.
Absolutely.
In that club, we find that there's other people who experience maybe the same loss as you, but it's still a club all around.
Yeah.
You just have your little subcategories.
Yeah.
And that makes it hurt less. That makes it hurt less.
Yeah. Yeah, there's the thing that I've been thinking about is, and this is, broader, this is something I've been thinking about for a while, is just the fact that, a lot of this conversation, I feel like you're hitting on a lot of the big topics that even inside of death are the ones that it's like, ooh, don't really want to talk about this. And
because I'm not an expert, that's why.
No, I think this is great. I think this is the stuff that people need to hear. And so when I think about like grief, and I'm starting to lose the thread, and I'm trying to make sure I can connect this all together. But when we don't talk about death, we don't really know how to deal with people who are grieving. And so then that puts the people who are grieving in a really shitty position to where they almost have to teach others in a way, right? It's like, hey, like...
And we shouldn't have to be doing that during that time period.
Totally.
No.
It's the last thing that it's like, hey, I don't need one more responsibility right now. But it's because we don't talk about it.
Casseroles,
Yeah. Yeah. And then
they don't make dinner.
And this is me trying to neatly tie this together, but I think that kind of connects to, you hinted at it a little bit, and hopefully I'm not putting words in your mouth, but you were talking about when you lose a baby, there's not flowers coming. There's this isolation in that because no one knows what to do. And so it's like, we have this natural instinct because we already avoid death at all costs, that when there's sudden traumatic loss, that it's like, ooh, the last thing they want is a reminder. So I'm just going to basically avoid at all costs. And then people are left isolated. And that's like the worst.
You know what I did? Oh, maybe it's been about a year. So my Aunt Caroline, she lost her son, Bobby, to COVID. And I hadn't seen her in a while. And I was sitting across from her, and my aunt on my left, she had lost her son to a traumatic, like a fire. And
Jeez.
I looked at both of my aunts, and I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to risk it. Wild card here. And I asked my Aunt Caroline, I was like, Thea, like, how do you want me? Do you want me to say your son's name? Would that make you feel better? Or what do you want? Like, how do you want me to speak about my cousin?
Yeah.
And she was more than okay. She's like, it makes me smile when they say his name, Bobby. And I just threw a wild card out there because I myself was trying to figure stuff out. And I was like, I'm going to experiment here, because my aunt to my left, she's still trying to figure it out whether she likes to hear her son's name or not. But
which is totally fine, right? Like and I don't mean to cut you off, but like
what she wanted.
Yeah. If people, I think you asking is huge, and people are allowed to not know. That is totally fine. Like, you can't expect people to have it all figured out. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no. So I just threw a wild card, and I was like, I'm going to ask her, like, what do you want? Because I was also wondering for myself, like, experimenting.
Yeah.
What would I want?
Yeah.
And I'm still with the loss of a child, like with my current partner. I do want him, like, having lost, their names are Scarlet and Violet. And oddly enough, he chose it because of Pokemon. I love it. And I like when he says the girls' names, and because their ashes are inside of a teddy bear. So I can actually pick up the teddy bear and hug it.
Oh,
it's
that's amazing.
It was the best purchase. To give a shout out to the Etsy owner, but honestly, best purchase that he's ever made.
That's really beautiful.
He gave me the ability to, if I want, I can take the girls from the shelf and I can hug them. I don't walk around with them 24/7, but I can do that.
But you could if you wanted to.
Yeah. And I say, good morning. And when I asked my aunt that question, I was still trying to figure it out for myself. What would I want? So when I did lose my girls, I knew then and there, like, what I did want. And it's wild to experiment or see. I don't know if I should ask this, but fuck it, I'm jumping in. Yeah. It's hard, like, when someone's grieving, like, they have to operate in the real world with all the things they are responsible for, and then to have to teach somebody about grief, like going back to what you said about adding that one more thing, it could set people maybe sideways. And I think that everybody has their own uniqueness, and you don't know the level of how much the weight that they can carry of that. And so,
totally. And where they are in the process, if it's fresh, if it's not. I think the term or the phrase, like, grief is messy, I think is about as clear as we can get with it. It's not this, like, 5-step. It's not, oh yeah, you do this and you do that and then it's gone. It's messy. It's all over the place. You
just had something pop up into my mind, and I'm like, the world is messy.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that perfectly explains. And now I don't want to try to, like, too neatly tie this whole thing into a bow, but that's what I've learned talking about death is life and death are so closely tied, and death is the great unknown. Guess what? Life is incredibly unknown. It's the same, but we have all these mechanisms to try to act like we have control and that we know, that we can plan, that we can expect what's going to happen. But I certainly do not need to tell you that you can't plan. Like, you cannot expect what's going to happen next. It is just constantly unknown. And so I think that's actually really perfect is, grief is messy because life is messy. These things run so in tandem, and we try to act like life isn't messy, that it's not chaos, that it's not strange. Yeah.
There's this perfect essay on the Modern Love column. Oh, God, I can't remember the name of the essay or the author of the essay, but that's pretty much what her essay is explaining, that death is, like, messy. The world is messy. Love is messy.
Yeah.
And these are all things you can't like, plan.
Yeah.
Like, you can't have, okay, for sure, if I do this, I'm going to get this.
Yeah. And we want to think that we do get to do it that way. But it all is a surrender. I'm glad that, I don't want to say I'm glad, but I was very concerned for a minute that we hadn't talked about your twin girls. I was like, oh my gosh, is there another devastating loss in this story? And not saying that there hasn't been enough, but I was like, oh shoot, but I'm glad that you mentioned that we did cover what you mentioned in your application, because for a second I was like, oh gosh, do we have another kind of major loss to dive into?
As right now, I'm talking to you, I am looking at them on the little custom shelf that I built them.
Oh, that's amazing.
And they are right next to the bed. And I really did get to talk about them. I got to say their name.
Yeah.
I got to say where they are at here in this world, even if it's just the ashes inside of a teddy bear. But something still remained, you know?
Yeah, totally.
And so it's like, no, I definitely got to talk about it because I didn't know what I wanted, how I wanted to talk about them.
Yeah.
Until I experimented with my aunt about a year maybe or so ago.
Yeah.
And here I am talking to you. And
you're doing it. I don't know what this is, but we're doing it. I guess
it's an experience.
Yeah, it's an experience for sure. I think one of the things that I'd love to ask you, and I think you've talked about it already, but this is a completely different perspective story than I've heard before. And I know that there are a lot of women that lose babies. And it is unfortunately a part of this life, a part of this world. And I know you've talked about kind of figuring out in your own way of how do I want to talk about them, and having this teddy bear to remember them and to be able to hold them and all these things. But I kind of just want to give you like a little bit of some room here if there's other things that have made a huge difference for you, because again, I think, and I don't know if I probably will take it out because I don't know if anybody really wants to hear my long rant at the very beginning of our call about, hey, you get to talk about whatever you want. We're not going to censor these experiences that you've had. And yeah, I think
there will be people who will.
Yeah. And so I feel like this also is, I mean, when I keep coming back to it, but you talked about, hey, when you lose babies, like people aren't sending you flowers, like nobody's showing up like they would at a baby shower and these things. And that happens to women. I definitely don't know the statistics, and I'm not saying that it happens 99% of the time. Like obviously that's not true, but this is an experience that you are not the only person that has been through this. And so I think, and this is my long rant of basically saying, what are the other things that helped you? Like what, if you could tell someone else maybe at like day one, where you were, and you looking back now, like what would you tell them that helped you? And we've already talked about everybody's unique, everybody's different. It's not necessarily the foolproof answer, but what do you wish someone would have told you?
No, it did. And oddly enough, I'm like, are we ever gonna? We'll just keep on talking. But you brought up something. I think that whether it's a pet, like, and people don't acknowledge like the loss like of pets as something significant. I lost my German Shepherd, and that German Shepherd was with me when I went for that experience of being coerced into an abortion and being suicidal. That dog was with me. Like he was there with me in the middle of the night. Like he was my man. That's what I called him. Like his name is Whiskey, but I would call him my man.
Yeah.
Just so loyal. Like the dates of when you lose someone or something that you love, I think the dates are so important. And there are other people who those dates will be important for, but just don't. The first instinct you're going to want to do is just go into your shell, right? But there are people out there that you will like form connections with, and you'll share your experience, that they'll remember your baby's name, and they will remember, oh, today would have been their due date, right? If they didn't make it up to the due date, or if the day that they were born, they also died, like whatever date it is, there is somebody that like you will form a connection with that will remember those small, some people probably think of them as just dates in a year, but there are people out there that you can form a connection with, and that those things that you carry, those things that are so engraved into your heart that like are just a part of you, they will also remember, and they are out there. Like you can have those connections, but I promise you that if you just take that little like first footstep of, even when you are still in the hospital and the nurses are coming in and out, right? And they're giving you all of this paperwork, resources for support groups. Like I still have the paper that they gave me of the resources, and I have it right next to my bed. It's right underneath actually this Gustav Klimt. It's a reprint of a painting called Life and Death. It's a awesome. God.
You're going to send me a photo of that. I want to see it.
Yeah. And when you get to learn about that painting, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. I have that paper right underneath that print of that painting. And it just reminds me that there are people out there. I'm not all alone.
Yeah.
But I do know that I have to remember that there are people there. There are these groups. There are individuals whom you can have a connection with. I just need to make that step of making myself known to them, because they're not out there scouting for these individuals, right?
Yeah, they're not going to find you in your apartment or your house or wherever. Yeah. They're not going to just, if they creepily walk in your house, and then we've got, I don't know if this is a person that we should trust.
I don't know if they're there for the reason you want them to be there for.
Yeah.
But it's just that one little thing, like that one little tiny like footstep, maybe having, for me personally, it's that piece of paper, the reminder of I can go. And isn't that also what the internet's supposed to be helping with. Like,
yeah, totally.
To feel less lonely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I was going to say that was such a beautiful answer because, and again, I think it's this tie of life and death and how closely they match, but it's that there are people out there. People do show up for other people. I know that the world has a lot of shitty things going on and has always had shitty things going on. And we just get that shoved down our mouths and our faces and all this stuff all the time. But people do show up for other people. It's a fact. There are good people out there. I like to believe that there's a lot more good people out there than bad people. It's just that's not what we're getting shown on the news. That's not what's getting likes and comments and shares on social media, but people do show up. And so I'm glad that you brought that up because I think it's, I don't know, one of the secret side missions of this project is just, I think, showing everybody's going through something. And like we said, doesn't matter how things compare one person to another, everybody's going through something and we can all show up for each other and that people will show up. If you allow them to, there will be people that show up and can be there for you in the way that you need them to be.
It's just vulnerability is even the word is like, to some people is scary, right?
Yeah,
and it's like huge. And it's just, okay, vulnerability is not just for romantic relationships.
Yeah.
It's just for human connection in general. And that can be scary for some people. And so when I say taking that like footstep, I just need either your left or your right foot. You choose. I'll let you choose. Or if you want to just keep your both feet planted and just lean out, either your left or your right arm, just lean out, right? Just having that vulnerability of whether you do it with your foot, you reach out with your left or right arm, either or.
Yeah.
Just the motion of leaning forward or anything forward is really scary. And it's just, I don't know, like if we just focus on all of the bad, just we're interested in things like crime and whatnot because it's part of ourselves. Like we are curious individuals, right? We want to know, we want to learn these things. Like sometimes maybe they're morbid, but you don't see a lot of people have the same curiosity for things that are of the softer nature of like love, of on the subject of grief and death. Like,
yeah, totally.
And it's because we have to be reminded of something that might scare us.
Yeah.
And I think that's hard.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to face that subject of death and grief, talk about it, but it's also like hard for some individuals to even move around in the world, like because of their own experiences. But like there are good things there. It's just maybe redirecting our sight or what we're viewing, you know?
Yeah, totally. I think that was a wonderful answer. Wonderful answer.
Thank you.
I do have, like I mentioned at the very beginning, during my really long rant about how you can talk about what you want to talk about, I do have one final question for you. And I think it brings us back into this space that or not brings us back, but keeps us in the space that we're already in a little bit. And it is about life. You know, we talk a lot about death on this podcast. And I like to end with this question of what's one thing you still want to experience in this lifetime?
One thing. Love for a child or a partner. I still want to experience giving love and also like receiving love. Yeah, because it does play a big role like in life and death because love, human connection, attachment, what you might want to call it, it does require some type of love, you know?
Yeah. Feels like the most important thing that we can do is love. And I know that sounds really cheesy, but I think it's true.
I know.
That's the hard thing is once you start getting into this territory, it's all the cliche statements, but but if you think about it, that the impermanence of life and death and all these things, they happen all the time. There are these cliche lines, but they actually do mean a lot if you can just get past the cheesiness.
Yeah, I have to send you also referencing a painting called Death and the Maiden by Egon Schiele. And so when you see the embrace, like you see the woman's embrace of like she's clinging on to like the other individual. And then some people might interpret it as like desperation.
Yeah.
But, you know, you do see some sense of she's just trying to have this connection, to maintain this connection. And then there's the other individual that's just very closed off and is just wrapped around in her arms. And so it's like when going back to the cliche of love is cliche. So you could say that the woman is cliche, but what happens if you don't keep yourself open to those cliches?
Totally.
Right? You look like the other individual.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm looking to send you the link.
I was going to say, I'm looking forward to, you have so much homework to send me after this call. But yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for being willing to do this. And then on top of it, being willing to be, I'm going to use the word that we were talking about a lot at the end, to be so vulnerable with a complete stranger and share
the word.
The scary word, that to share with a stranger and just to really talk about some really deep personal, you covered a lot of kind of the like ground in terms of all these aspects around death that people don't like to talk about. And so I just, sending a lot of gratitude your way for doing this.
And I'm also grateful for you having that like vulnerability, right? To do what you're doing. You're trying to put that good out there. And maybe if we focused a little bit more on the good, people would start to see that a little bit more on their algorithm, hopefully.
Fingers crossed. I'm doing my best, but yeah, you're right. It is an exchange, although that sounds very transactional in a kind of a gross capitalist type of way, but you know, it takes two to tango or something. I don't know. I'm losing any good ways of saying it. But yeah, I'm so grateful to you, and definitely stay in touch. I'm looking forward to seeing all the things that I asked you for. And I hope you have a good rest of your day.
You too.
All right. Bye.
Okay, bye.
The caller carried an enormous amount into this conversation. A partner lost suddenly, twin daughters lost during pregnancy, a childhood that didn't offer much softness to begin with. They went looking for answers in near-death moments, in books, in a war zone on the other side of the world. And what they came back with wasn't a theory about what happens when we die. It was something more useful to them than that. The sense that grief doesn't need to be explained or solved, just carried alongside other people instead of alone. It's not a club anyone asked to join, as they put it, but a club all the same. Maybe that's worth thinking about a little bit more. Not whether you know the right thing to say to someone grieving, but whether you're willing to just ask them what they need instead of guessing on their behalf. If I'm being honest, I've never really known what I was doing here. I'm not a professional, as you'll hear me say in many of the calls. I know I say the wrong thing sometimes, but if there's one thing I found after nearly 100 conversations, it's that showing up for people, truly listening, and responding with some care and compassion, those things go a long way. More soon. I'll see you next week. When We Die Talks exist because people have stories worth telling, and most of them never get told in a way that lasts. Mnemosiny is my attempt to do something about that. It actually started with a guest from this show, and after his interview, he told me how much it meant to have something he could share with the people in his life. So he didn't have to keep repeating himself, and so nothing got lost over time. I couldn't stop thinking about how many people have a version of that. Honestly, all of us do. All of us have a life worth capturing, and people who love us and would give anything to hear it told. Mnemosiny is a guided conversation with me where we capture someone's life in their own words, where they come from, what made them who they are, and the stories they want people they love to know. The recording is yours, private, personal, something you can share with anyone you want. If someone came to mind just now, even if it was yourself, that's probably worth paying attention to. You can learn more at mnemosiny.com. That's NEMOSENE.com. Thanks for listening to this episode of When We Die Talks. These conversations don't offer answers, but they do open space to reflect, to feel less alone, and maybe to see things a little bit differently than before. If you'd like to explore your own beliefs out loud, you can apply to be an anonymous caller at whenwedietalks.com. And if a full call feels like too much, the voicemail is always open. Leave a message at 971-328-0864 and share whatever death has stirred in your life. Listener support truly helps keep this project going. If you'd like to support the podcast, you'll find a link in the show notes. And as always, please like, share, and follow. Every bit makes a difference. Until next time, have a good life.